Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Chris Lee. Commodore fans, on your feet. It's time to anchor down.
Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast presented by Dr. Jody Jones DDS. We're part of the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today is Luke Wyatt. We will discuss Vanderbilt's win at Georgia. Luke appears on the guest line that's presented by Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group. Michael is a local carpenter and a lifelong Vandy fan. He builds bookshelves, cabinets, picture frames, furniture, and made-to-order items, including a display case for my prized Dale Murphy jersey. I've seen Michael's work. He's a true craftsman. If you're in the market for custom woodwork, give Michael a call at 615-830-9458. Now on to our conversation with Luke Wyatt. Luke Wyatt joins me on the podcast today, as he does every Monday. Luke, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Chris. I hope you had a great weekend and recharged your batteries a little bit. I had an interesting one myself, but not as fun as yours, I don't think.
Yeah, I got a chance, and I'm literally do this maybe every 3 or 4 years. My wife and I got a chance to spend about a day and a half out of town with no kids and no in-laws. So we did that in Chattanooga this weekend, and I learned something interesting. Apparently, I have the power to speak things into existence.
Yes, you do. Let's hear about.
Well, you don't even know yet. But this is I did a podcast with George Plaster a week and a half ago that I aired last Friday, and the question had come up about what are your future plans for Vandy Sports, and I said, well, I have given it some thought before in spells. What happens if I get hit by a bus? And so, guess what happened in Chattanooga?
Are you kidding me?
Well, that's taking some license, but I had to laugh after just mentioning that. We were parked in a parking spot, and I look up, and here comes a bus. Next thing I know, I can reach out, and the side of the bus is literally inches from my car. And the bus has scraped the side of my mirror and left a mark on the side of the bus. And the lady driving the bus didn't know she had done it. My wife gets out and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then she gets out and looks and discovers, hey, if I move the bus any further, I might sideswipe your car. So we had to wait, 15 minutes for the bus company to come, and then to hire a more skilled driver to pull out without hitting us, because we were up against the curb, and if we had moved over, I probably would have scraped the tar out of my wheels. But anyway, it was funny. I started laughing. My wife's sitting there going, we almost get hit by a bus, and it's like, well, honey, that might actually be my fault.
Yeah, you have to take credit for this one, Chris.
Right, I do.
Okay.
Right, I did have a laugh. I was like, I did bring up getting hit by a bus last week, and here we go. I guess Jerry Stackhouse is speaking winning into existence. I don't know how else to explain it. Vanderbilt goes to Athens without Liam Robbins, wins a game against a respectable Georgia team. I saw the last 15 seconds. All I saw was the box score. I saw it half. Vanderbilt was 8 of 12 from three. I did see the last 15 seconds where Ezra Mannion was hitting a lot of foul shots, and Vanderbilt committed a stupid foul but hung on anyway. And since you really saw it and I didn't, let's just get your take here.
Yeah, we go, honestly, to be honest with you, after hearing the news again, this is two straight games. We find out on the day of the game, or maybe the night before, late the night before, that you've lost Liam Robbins, and then you lose Lee Dort. So now you're down to one real true five in Quentin Malloy-Brown. And I'm thinking, it's going to be a big order to win at Athens. They had not lost a home game. They were either 10-0 or 11-0 at home, and playing well. And I thought, well, this is going to be the day when we lay a complete egg. Well, I was completely wrong. And I want to give a ton of credit to Coach Stackhouse and those kids, because they played their butts off. Probably the most, even though that second half against Arkansas was incredibly efficient, the full game, with the exception of a couple of bonehead plays by Studi and a couple other guys, they played about as good as they can play without a true post player. And I was a little bit surprised, Chris. I really was. But Ezra played the best game I think he's played at Vanderbilt. He was quick on quick, and defensively, it was his best game for sure. So they put all that together, and then hitting 10 threes. You know, Jerry had said before, and I agree with this, the recipe for us to win is to hit 10 to 12 threes. And I think that's true, and I think that'll continue to be true the rest of the way.
This has been a bizarre season in a number of ways, and Jerry Stackhouse was right about one thing that I kind of laughed about at the time. They lose 60-48 to Southern Miss back on November 11th. And he says in the post game something along the lines of, offense isn't our problem, that'll come around, defense is our issue. And I'm like, you just scored 48 points against Southern Miss.
Right.
Fast forward 2 months, here's some stats. And I know you don't like stats as much as I do, but these are interesting. Vanderbilt 43rd in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency and 157 on defense. And when I get into the offensive numbers, it will make no sense. And here's what makes even less sense. Like, Scottie Pippen Jr. was one of the better offensive players in the league. I just thought offensively they won't be anywhere near what they are without him. And defensively was where we all thought he struggled. Last year, they were 90 in offense and 40 in defense. I have no way to explain any of this. Do you?
Well, let me take a stab at it. I think offensively, the reason why we're more efficient is because it was kind of a one-man show, and you got a lot of guys standing around getting stagnant with Scotty. I'm not taking anything away from Scotty and his game, but you know, at the end of games or the last 5 minutes of a ball game, it was all Scotty. You know, getting to the line and hitting foul shots, which is a feather in his cap. But I do think that affected the team offense. I think when everyone's involved, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, and you would know better than me, the last 2 or 3 games, we've had either 4 or 5 guys in double figures. So it's a more balanced attack, and that kind of works because if you've got one guy not playing well and you still got 3 or 4 more hitting on all cylinders, then you're okay. Whereas if Scotty had a bad night, then Vanderbilt had a bad night. That's my assumption.
That's as good as anything I've got. I'm looking at their Ken Pom page. It doesn't make any sense to me. It has 4 factors. One of them is effective field goal percentage. They're 189 in that. Turnover percentage, they are 83rd in that. Offensive rebounding percentage, they are 72nd. And free throw attempts to field goal attempts, they are 162nd nationally. Now, and if you unwind it further, it makes less sense. They are 213th nationally in three-point efficiency, 160th in two-point efficiency, and 189th in foul shooting percentage. I don't know how that adds up to the 43rd best offensive team in the country, but that's what Ken Pom's got.
You know, I think it adds up, and this is why. When we're bad, we're awful. And when we're good, we're really, really good. So there's not a middle ground there to speak of. So you have to, you add in all those really bad numbers that we had in those non-conference games, and then you put them with the great halves and great and good games that we've had. You know, every game we have, except for 2, has been less than double-figure losses. So
yeah.
You know,
they play everybody close.
Yeah, they really do.
Good or bad.
And when the ball doesn't stick on offense, like it didn't the other day, you know, you had guys confidently shooting the basketball. And you know, going back to the Alabama game for a second, I know Alabama's a lot better than Georgia, but their length is incredible. But we still had open shots that we missed against Alabama. That could have been a lot closer game if we hit 50% of those. So, it just comes down to the simple thing is that if you hit your threes, you can stay in every game and have a chance to win.
He does seem to be a pretty fair offensive coach.
I think so. And the kids just, I mean,
the kids love him, I do think. Yeah, there's been a lot of criticisms of Jerry, but the one that I've not heard this year is, well, I mean, I know he's had some tiffs with guys here and there, but I do think you're right. I do think that the players really do like playing for him.
And honestly, that's all that matters in the big scheme of things. If they play hard and play well for him, what he does socially with social media and that type of stuff, I don't care about it because I'm not on it all the time. But I understand that it doesn't serve you well. And I think maybe he's figured that out or someone's helped him figure that out.
Yeah, for people that didn't notice, he unblocked a lot of people on Twitter this weekend that included me. How do you think that came about?
I don't have any idea. If I had to guess, I would think there were some conversations with either he and Candace or he and maybe even Daniel Deermeyer through Candace. I don't know. Someone brought it up to him, obviously. I know Joey had made a comment that she was in the press conference after, which game was it? The Alabama game, maybe? And that's not a normal.
I think it was Arkansas. Yeah.
So that not being a normal thing, maybe there's been some more conversations there. I don't know, but obviously something has turned. And his demeanor after the Alabama situation, where he was visibly upset about the Darius Miles situation at Alabama, maybe kind of told him, look, I need to quit taking some things so serious and shut my mouth and just start, erase the board and go back to square one on some things.
Yeah, that was a weird press conference. I wasn't in the room for it. I was doing some writing, but that was just an odd. I mean, I get it, I guess, but where he crumples up the box score and says it doesn't matter. It was not a look you usually see from a coach.
No, and he was emotionally he was authentic. He was.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, and sorry to interrupt you. The one thing that I do really like about Jerry, I do think he cares about his players. I do think he tries to be a positive influence. I do think he has a soft spot for kids who have come from bad backgrounds or whatever. I do think that part about him is very authentic.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And moving forward, we just, like I said, I'm the guy that, not the big stat guy like you are, but I do think you take it at two games at a time. And I said before the Alabama game, if we get a split, we're still okay, even without Liam and Dort. At the time, not knowing they would be out for 4 to 6 weeks. I just think the same thing. We got Kentucky at home Tuesday. It being in the middle of the week, maybe not as many Kentucky fans will be there if it would have been a Saturday game. So that may help us a little bit. Hopefully our students and a few more of our fans will show up and we have a good atmosphere tomorrow night.
Well, again, I didn't get to see anything other than the last 15 seconds. So I don't have a lot to offer here other than the box score. One thing that's interesting is Miles Studi hits all 4 of his threes. And again, the team shot the 3 well this weekend. Do you have anything else to add on the game before we move into the mailbag?
I'd like to. First half, I think we led 25 or 26 minutes 35 or 36 minutes of the game. We led pretty much wire to wire. There was a couple of times that Georgia got the lead, but we maintained a 5 to 7 point lead most of the game. We gave up that 11-0 run at the end, and it was because, Coach Stack got a lot of criticism because we kind of went to the weave where we kind of, don't go into our offense till 10 or 12 seconds left on the clock. And they blamed that and said, well, we got out of our rhythm. I'm not so sure that was the case, but Georgia pushed up the intensity much like Tennessee did on us for those last few minutes. But I will tell you this, without having Liam, Quentin Malloy-Brown, for whatever reason, he played his best game by far with 11 rebounds, 7 points, but he was all over the place, diving for loose balls. And it's going to take that type of effort out of him until one of those two guys get back for us to be successful.
Are you ready for the mailbag?
I am.
All right. Our mailbag is presented by our good friends at Sutherland and Belk. And here's the read, which is sponsored by a family-owned, is a family-owned injury law firm. If your loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200 to see what your rights are and if they can help. You'd think I'd have that memorized by now. I feel like Anchorman. They took my teleprompter away there for a minute. Okay, let's start here. Door Fan 6. How do you feel about Vandy fans selling their tickets to opposing fans in basketball and football? Personally, it ticks me off, he says. I don't think there's a mystery how you feel, but since you were asked, I will let you answer.
Well, I said this on one of our other podcasts. It disgusted me. And I was not the most popular guy in the athletic department about that subject because I would tell them face to face. You know, if I was the athletic director, I'd fire you. Because now I'm talking about employees right now, because that happens even with employees of the department. You know, we'd get complimentary tickets, and then you turn around and sell them to an opposing team to cheer against the place that's giving you a paycheck. To me, that's disgusting. As far as fans, you know, again, I don't like it, but it's their dollars. And if they feel like, well, I can pay for my season ticket by selling my tickets to the Tennessee and Kentucky game, but then don't complain about the crowd and don't complain about us not winning because you're contributing to it.
Okay, I'm just going to go in order of questions here, which means we're going to be jumping all over the place. Go Doors 94, what are your recollections of the old football stadium? Who led the drive to rebuild it? How was the rebuilt stadium received at the time? And in retrospect, was the rebuild done well?
I assume we're talking about when we rebuilt it from in 81 or 82, whatever it was.
It's got to be.
Rory Kramer and John Rich at the time. John Rich was instrumental in it big time with some other people that he knew in the oil business. A coal business, and I give those two probably the biggest amount of credit. But as far as it done well, you know, our stadium and West Virginia Stadium were built by the same folks, and I think, except for capacity, is pretty much, if you look at the stadium's inner workings or whatever, they look identical. So the stadium's fine. There's a couple of sight lines that are a problem where you can't see corners of the end zone, but besides that, it's a lot better sight lines than a lot of stadiums in the SEC.
Okay, poor Vandy fan 615, with Robbins and Dort out for the foreseeable future, do you think other players will continue to step up as we saw in the Georgia game? How do you think the team can match up with Kentucky's Sheboygan, Florida's Castleton, and many of the SEC's other talented centers without Robbins and Dort?
Well, Sheboygan's a problem no matter what, even with Liam. I think that's even a bad matchup for Liam because of Sheboygan's strength and quickness. But it's what Quentin did Saturday. Again, he's going to have to continue to do, and we're going to have to stay out of foul trouble. Have to. That's the only way we can do well against Kentucky, I think.
I knew there was something I meant to ask you, and it was this. What is up with all the mid-season injuries they've had? And that goes to women's basketball too.
I don't know. It's mind-boggling to me. Someone on the board, and I'm sure you saw it, posted since 2016 the injuries that we've had with key players. And that's the thing. It's always been our best or second best player, or maybe most important player. Maybe I should put it that way. I don't know. Midfoot sprains. I understand Liam, you know, he had health problems and foot problems before he got here.
Right.
So I don't look at that one with much of a question. But the other guys, you know, I don't understand. Now, the way you practice, the way the floor is at Memorial, who knows? You know, there's always opinions on that stuff. The strength staff, the training staff. I just think we've had some buzzard luck, as you call it. And it's just unbelievable. For the women, if you'll remember this, back when Melanie was here, we had a rash, I want to say 2 or 3, same type of thing that Ralph has had. right toward the end of her career as well. So that's been a long time too. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I really don't.
VA 72, in the days of Woody Woodenhoff, I remember Vanderbilt dropping tickets at my institution for free distribution. I began attending games and later purchased season tickets. At some point, the practice was discontinued. Wouldn't this be a good way to help develop the fan base?
You know, I sat in meetings when I was at Vanderbilt about this, and everyone was bouncing ideas off of each other. And you'd get half the people in the meeting, at a table of 20 people, and half the people would say, "Oh, well, you're devaluing your product when you start giving away stuff." I remember when we were really down in football back in the 70s, you could get tickets off of bunny bread. And, you know, if that's what it takes to fill the stadium with people that are going to support Vanderbilt, get it to the youngest fans you can, and hopefully you win that day and then they come back. I've heard so many people tell me that are Vanderbilt fans when they were young, well, we went and we won that day and I got hooked. You know, if you go and you get B50 to you're probably not going back even if you get a free ticket. But if you go and you win the game, so that's important too. So it's got to be timing and a little bit of luck there. But I think you should do anything and everything you can to put butts in the seats.
All right, look at it this way. Take out Tennessee and Kentucky. We'll see what those will be. But what do you have in a building for a game? 10,000 max these days? 9 to 10,000?
No,
I'm saying throw out Tennessee and Kentucky because they're going to bring a lot of their own people. What's the most that you can put in the building for Vanderbilt basketball right now?
I would say about 7,500.
Yeah,
because season tickets. I would think season tickets are anywhere in the 4 to 5 range. That's just by judging that gym, because you got the true fans are going to show every time. And I think that's it. I think the Pittsburgh game was the perfect barometer because you had a good team, a non-conference. You were honoring the 88 team, and there was about 5,000 there for that. So I think you get 7,500. Say Auburn or somebody like that. Although I think there'll be a lot of Auburn people here too. The way they're playing well right now. Yeah.
So are you talking just Vandy fans or people in the building? Period, including opposing fans.
No, I'm talking about Vandy fans. Vandy fans,
okay,
7,500.
Yeah, so add another 2,000, 2,500, maybe you're looking at 10,000 in the building max, right? There's a point that I'm getting to.
Yes.
Okay, so you still got 4,000 plus seats left.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing: you give away 4,000 free tickets. I don't know that that's the right plan, but I'm just throwing this out there, right?
Right.
Some of those people are going to buy concessions. They're going to pay to park. They're going to do whatever. Most of those people are probably going to buy something. I shouldn't say most, but a lot.
Right.
Even if 1 out of 4,000 people, drops $5 on popcorn or whatever, that's $5 more than what you had.
Sure.
The point I'm getting at is now maybe you lose some of the season ticket sales because people are going, hey, why buy the tickets if I can get them for free? There is some pullback on that, but the point is, I think when you need a fan base and just getting a person in the building gives you a chance to make some revenue on other things, for that alone, it's worth considering.
I agree with you. Now, what you can't do, and this was, like I said, in those meetings we'd have, the argument of devaluing your product, as long as you give them where there's not going to be seats sold. In other words, the free tickets you give would have to be in 3F and 3L.
Right.
Maybe some upper decks on the sides. But because those aren't going to be sold anyway, it doesn't matter. They're just collecting dust. So why not give them to Vandy fans or a fan that's first time experience at a ball game and they're neutral and want to see what it's like? Because the atmosphere in Memorial, you know as well as I do, Chris, I'm not talking about back when Foz and Sphere and Ford were there and we were the only game in town and everybody in Nashville wanted to come see us. I'm talking about to the Shane Foster times. That game was electric. And it can be that way again. Now, I don't think with the climate anymore that you're going to get 15th. I'm kind of, and I'll probably get some pushback on this. I'm of the opinion that you might want to cut capacity and utilize those upper decks for something else. I don't know, for office space, whatever. I'm of the opinion, Georgia's atmosphere, and they usually have a dead crowd. It was packed, sold out to the rafters Saturday. I was surprised by that. They had 10,000. That's all it seats. But, if you had 10 to 12,000 just Vanderbilt fans, then you're going to have the same atmosphere you had anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what you could do is you could put chairbacks everywhere. That might be reduce capacity a little bit, make the experience a little bit better. I mean, the gym is starting to look old. The seats, I think, have been there since 1920. I mean, that's a joke, but you know what I mean. The benches are looking a little dated, and there's some charm to that. I get it, but
there is. I go to Fenway Park every once in a while. I don't know if you've ever sat in some of those seats, but they were the original seats in Fenway, and they're horrible.
Yeah,
they're horrible. It's like on a rock, but it's Fenway Park, so no one complains. And that's what I think Joe Biddle even coined this phrase. He said, Memorial Gym is the Fenway Park of college basketball. And I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, JDL Cav, you and Chris have spoken many times about the Vanderbilt fan base and how it is currently small. In your experience, what has been the largest size of the fan base? What do you think the largest could realistically be? Large enough to consistently dominate the football stadium against every team? Says, I went to Vanderbilt many moons ago. The basketball team was excellent. Memorial Gym was consistently packed.
Well, we just kind of talked about that in basketball. In football, I can remember believe it or not, the peak of season ticket sales, because I was close with the ticket manager at the time, was 1995 when Rod Dowhauer was our head coach. We sold 26,000 season tickets. That's the most we've ever sold. Now, one of the reasons was Notre Dame was on the schedule, so that pumped it up some. And there wasn't a secondary market like there is today. So, to me, if football stadium held 30,000 or 35 instead of 41, you could get it. If we start going consistently to bowl games, you could get it to where you have only 10,000 of the other team's fans in there and 25,000 Vanderbilt.
The largest I remember was the early 80s. I remember going to the Hall of Fame Bowl as a little kid, and that place was packed with Vanderbilt fans. Right.
Well, when we go to a bowl, that's the thing. All of our fans come from all over the country just to go to a bowl because it was such a rare thing. If we start going to bowls every other year, I don't think our crowds will be quite as good, because you know how it is if you do something over and over again, they kind of become complacent.
Kind of like baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When did the stadium in football start to get taken over with regularity? I don't remember that being a thing. I know Tennessee used to do it, but I don't remember that being a thing. Oh, maybe until the 2000s.
Yeah, I don't think it has been a thing except when we played Tennessee or Alabama. I used to have, Chris, one of my first jobs at Vanderbilt, I don't know if I've shared this with you, when I was working part-time before I became a full-time employee, I had all the program vendors. I was in charge of that also on game day. And when we'd play Alabama, we'd sell out every program, and it would be bought by 80% Alabama fans. So Alabama and Tennessee, besides those two teams, and it's obvious why Tennessee, you're in the state of Tennessee, but no other teams like Georgia, and maybe it was because Georgia was mediocre then. They weren't great. I mean, they were good. They had their times, but they weren't what they are today. I dare say the first year Kirby Smart was there and we beat them in Athens when Zach Cunningham made that great play on fourth down. That team, if it would have been played in Nashville, would not have had that many fans there.
This season of the Vandy Sports Podcast has been made possible by my friend Dr. Jody Jones, DDS. When it comes to general or cosmetic dentistry services, Jody is the best in Nashville. Just check out his client list. It testifies to that. He sees movie stars, music stars, athletes, coaches, you name it. Jody is the dentist of choice for stars in Nashville, but he sees regular folks like you and I as well. What people love about Jody's office is the ambiance. It's relaxing. It's friendly. Someone described it to me as a tooth spa. Whether your needs are general or cosmetic, go see Jody today. Call him 615-270-2322. See him at 55 Music Square East, not far from downtown or the Vanderbilt campus. Jody is a former Vanderbilt football player and a huge Commodore booster, so go and talk Vandy sports with him while you're there. Go see Jody Jones today. Thank him for his support of this podcast, because without it, this season would not be possible. I'm not sure. Sorry, my audio went out there. If people didn't hear it, Zach Cunningham won that game by himself. But in any way, sorry, having some strange things going on here with the audio. Okay, Trey 1. How much of an impact is NIL on basketball and baseball?
Well, after talking to a friend of mine at Alabama this past weekend, our NIL, what we're doing and what Alabama's doing, you can't even compare them. It'd be like Division II and Division I. So it's an impact. Now, I think Tim Corbin's smart enough to know how to dance around it, and if he feels like something's deserved, he's going to get it done. So I don't worry about that. Basketball, I think we lag behind. I just do. I don't have any proof of that. I don't know how much our kids get or how much they don't get, but I think we lag behind.
Oh, I think they do. They definitely do in baseball. I think with baseball, it's becoming a big factor for them, and not in a good way.
Well, hopefully that'll we'll figure that out. We're still ranked in the top 10 preseason, so as long as we have those pitchers we got this year, I feel pretty good about things.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's doing things the right way, and sometimes there's avoiding problems by neglect, which Vanderbilt
right.
has sort of been. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Exactly what you're saying.
You're seeing NIL issues in a lot of places by schools that have gone all in on that. I think Vanderbilt is avoiding some issues just by not participating in the arms race. Is that a good way to put it?
No, I think you're right. And again, who we recruit and the type of kids we recruit, it's not a whole lot of difference right now, I don't think, because we don't get the 4s and 5 stars anyway. We never have. The only 5-star recruit I remember in football in my life was Chris Young out of Batesville, Mississippi. I remember some high 4s, Jonathan Lloyd, David Corral, some others, but not 5s. So we're not getting that anyway. So I don't know how much we're losing in that whole deal. Now, keeping players, once you develop them, that's my worry. But this year, I think we've had the least amount of transfers of anybody. Is that correct? I think we only have had 8 or 9.
In what sport?
Football.
Yeah, and it's.
And Texas A&M, who gives more money than anybody, probably had 25 leave.
Well, it's this weird thing, right? Because you're seeing problems with NIL. I think you're seeing it in chemistry. I know you had one school in the East that had some issues when some NIL stuff got out, and some kids that had been recruited on NIL who weren't even playing were making a lot of money than some of the kids who were winning games. And it was like, hey, wait a minute. So I know you had that happen at one school. And I think you're having some issues too, that kids who are 18, 19 get turned loose with a lot of money and not a lot of guidance. That leads to some issues too.
Well, I know for a fact there's a school, I won't mention the situation, but there's a school in the SEC in basketball that is probably tops in the NIL money, maybe second or third, but they're the top 3. And they've had some issues off the field that have been embarrassing and criminal. So you're going to get that. You know, think about it, Chris. When you were that age, if someone gives you $100, just say $100,000 for a number to work with, $100,000 coming right out of high school, how would you? Would you been smart enough to spend that money the way you should?
You know, I might have, because we never had a lot to spend as kids, and we were taught to hang on to every bit of it for the most part. But my guidance at home and what a lot of these kids get at home are very different.
Right. That's right. But
I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I would have been so floored that I might have been paralyzed by it all.
Yeah, that's right. And then again, once you get that money, to me, that's a distraction from what you're there for. It's a distraction from your education. It's a distraction from your being all in on your basketball or football team or whatever it may be. So you're right. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword. It can work for you. I think so far the example that it isn't working well is Texas A&M.
No doubt, because Texas A&M was number 6 in preseason and didn't even get to a bowl.
No, we were as good as Texas A&M, no doubt. And then they had 25 guys leave. That's my other point. To me, that's probably I'm not getting enough money. And we saw a situation at Tennessee there that probably cost them the blowout at South Carolina, where there was that was caused by an NIL situation, from what I heard.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. I'd heard that rumor, but I didn't know if that was true. Yeah. The weird thing is about once you start introducing more money into things, it just makes for more unhappiness. And like the more money involved, the more potential people have to get unhappy. It's a weird way to explain it. You would think that if you were, paying these kids a couple $100, that it would sort of work the other way, but it really doesn't.
No, and I think there should be a cap on it, and I think it should be like, let's just say $4,000 a month, $5,000, whatever they decide to do, and it should be everybody equally. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to have locker room problems. Now, you're still going to have a problem where the quarterback says, I should get more than the kicker. I get that. But if everybody's getting the same, you at least go back to the way things used to be.
Depends on who the kicker is, right?
You're right. Yeah. If it's Mahar at Dallas.
Yeah, I was thinking of someone else, but that also.
Oh, I think.
Yeah, it's we're just living in a weird time, and I will give Vanderbilt credit for this. I do think that the education and the guidance piece that they're starting to put with it, I think there's some wisdom in that.
Let me ask you a question, Chris. This is my weekly one question I get of you. I was looking at some statistics I saw over the weekend of a percentage of or admittance. I guess that's what it's called. What percentage of applicants are admitted to Vanderbilt? And I saw where we're like tied for third, and with only 7% applicants get in. Does that include athletics? I assume it does.
I would think it does.
So Stanford is only 3 or 4%. They were leading the way.
Yeah.
And the only state school I saw in it, or non-private school, I shouldn't say state, was Florida. They were like 30%.
Interesting. Which I guess that's because Florida's got an enormous population. That would be a lot of it, but
right. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, West Nash door. Had we beaten Grambling, would we be on the bubble currently? That would be a no.
No, I think you need 2 of those. You need that one back and the VCU or any of the other ones. Now, I'll tell you what did bump us a little bit was Temple beating the number 1 team in America on their home floor. Right. That was a shocker. I mean, Temple, to me, was a very average team, and they go in and win at Houston. And I think Houston's the best team in America, except for free throws. That just shows you how important free throws are. They don't shoot the free throws well, and that might bite them in the NCAA.
Yeah, let's see. Houston, by the way, still number 1 in the net despite that loss. Vanderbilt this morning, I think, is in the 80s.
84
maybe lower.
Is what I saw. Yeah.
85. Problem is 1-5 in quad 1, 3-3 in quad 2, 1-0 in quad 3, and 5-1 in quad 4. So you got a quad 1. You got as many quad 1 losses as you have quad 1 wins. Take Grambling out of that, it looks a little different. I would think they'd slide up, I don't know, maybe 10 spots or so, but still just hasn't been a lot of work done. When you're 4-8 against the top 2 quads,
Well,
that just doesn't.
You still have a chance to do something because
Yeah,
who
they
you've got.
they have a lot of chances coming up. They could finish 500 in the league. I don't think that's the craziest. I don't think they will, but maybe if they can get Robbins back. There's been some talk that he might come back sooner than anticipated, but I'm not anywhere near to declare that a reality yet.
Chris, one other thing about the Georgia game that Paul Lewis started the game. Noah Shelby didn't play because Noah. I know why Noah's not playing. That's because of his defensive non-prowess. If that's the way to put it. But anyway, but Paul Lewis hit 2 threes, and I've been big on Paul Lewis, and I don't understand why he got more playing time. I like Paul Lewis as the backup point guard.
We are out of questions. Do you have anything else before we end the show today?
No, it's just excited about the next two. If we can win somehow tomorrow night, and then you got to go to Texas A&M, and I think A&M is one of those teams that's beatable. They're not an offensive juggernaut. They're obviously well coached with a buzz, but I think it'll be one of those close games again if we shoot the ball well. It's that simple. Because we don't turn it over, knock on wood.
Yeah. Luke, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We thank our presenting sponsor, Jody Jones DDS. We thank our other sponsors, Sutherland and Belk, Michael Kendrick of the Kendrick Group, and myperfectfranchise.net. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, and that's how we make this work, please email me at chrisley70@gmail.com. We also ask that you subscribe to our website, vandysports.com. That is $99 a year. You get things there that you don't get here. And of course, please rate, review, and subscribe where you see our podcast. That helps us get noticed. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at vandysports.com. Follow me at chrisley70. And finally, subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel as well. Thank you for listening to the Vandy Sports Podcast, which is part of the 440 Network. I'm your host, Chris Lee. We'll catch you with another episode coming very soon.